Call of Juarez is an Old West-styled first-person shooter that came out in 2006. Now back in the day, I knew of this game, but I think I was on board with the modern military trend and just never really played it up until this week. So, today we're going to be analyzing how well Call of Juarez has aged in 2019. Hey everyone, Jarek the Gaming Dragon here. If you're already subscribed and you haven't clicked that bell, be sure to do that, otherwise YouTube won't tell you that I posted anything. If you haven't subscribed, well, watch this video and maybe consider subscribing if you like it. Now 2006 was 13 years ago, so this game graphically is a bit dated by 2019 standards, but even in 2019 this game actually still looks fairly good. Now this game originally came out for PC, then was ported to consoles a year later, so it was originally meant for the PC user base. And there was a reason. This was one of the first games that fully utilized DirectX 10. And it does show. For 2006, this is a stellar looking game, and I dare say nothing looked better than this game that year. The next closest comparison would be Gears of War 1, but that game sort of shot itself in the foot by making everything look brown and gray. The later Gears games would fix this, but Call of Juarez never had this problem. In fact, colors are very vibrant in this game. Lots of bright greens, lots of bright blue. It doesn't look brown and dull like you could have made an old western. It's very pleasurable to look at artistically, but that's not all. The textures for 2006 look pretty good, anti-aliasing does its job, all these options do what you would expect them to do, and make the game look rather crisp. But the best thing this game does is the lighting. At times this game gave me vibes of Far Cry 2, which came out 2 years after this game. Looking out into the sunset on the desert is rather pretty in this game, even 13 years later, but that comes with a bit of a price. This game is one of the first games to run on DirectX 10, and it shows. For most of the game, it's pretty solid. But towards the end of the game, I got so many crashing issues that I just gave up and started playing it in DirectX 9. I could not beat this game in DirectX 10. I'm sure there are patches or fixes you can do to make this game run on DirectX 10 without these crashing issues at the end, but I couldn't find them and I didn't want to find them as I was streaming. Regardless, just playing the game default, you will most likely run into some issues if you're playing in DirectX 10. But when it works, it really works and is unrivaled for that time. I mean, to give you an idea, the 360 came out not long before this game. There are two changes you might want to do. The first one is that, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why they did this, maybe artistic direction, they added black bars to the top and bottom of the screen. Not just during cutscenes, but during gameplay. This is annoying, and I never want to play with this. Thankfully, there are very easy mods to get rid of this. If you go to PC Gaming Wiki, it's just some files you drag and drop into your folder, and then they're gone. That's why you won't see them in this video. I didn't want to play it like that. But maybe you like it that way. I don't know, it's personal preference, but I personally hated it. The second one is that despite the fact that this game was originally made for the PC market, it does not have an FOV slider. Thankfully, this is also easily fixable. Also going to the PC Gaming Wiki, it's just files you drag and drop into the folder. You launch Call of Juarez, you launch the FOV fixer, and then minimize it. You don't even need to look at it. At this point, you have hotkeys to make the FOV wider or smaller, super easy fix, and you can do some crazy stuff with this.
Alright, we're going. We're going. I'm waiting for the game to crash. We're going. How far? Oh my good lord. Alright, let's...
Can't go out there like a clay.
This is,
I may or may not have been having a little too much fun. But back on topic, I have to give this game credit. It looked fantastic for 2006, and even still looks good today. Story-wise is genuinely interesting. I'm generally not a big story-based person. Usually if I'm playing a shooter, I kind of focus on the combat. But this is one of those games that really had story in your face. And not in a bad way. I guess that makes sense. This is a slower paced game, and it's an Old West game, so story is going to be a big part of the game. Don't worry, if you haven't played this game, I'm not going to spoil anything. The game opens with you playing as Billy Candle. Candle is sort of a nickname. You see, your father left you at birth, and your stepfather was rather abusive. The town you lived in, Hope, Texas, because of course the town is going to be called Hope, every town is ever called Hope, the town didn't care for you. So you felt like an outcast. You were left with a medallion from your mother, and you were trying to find the gold of Juarez. And you're only returning to your hometown empty-handed. You couldn't find it. Upon returning to your hometown, you find your mother and stepfather murdered, with Call of Juarez written in blood on the barn wall. What makes this story interesting is that you see the story from two sides. At this point you swap over to the other side. You're playing as Reverend Ray McCall.
That's why.
It is indeed disappointing that your fellow citizens prefer the pleasures of the flesh to the spiritual salvation offered by this sanctuary. In vain has the voice from heaven said of the whore of Babylon, "Come forth, my people, out of here, that ye have no fellowship with her sins, and that ye receive not her plagues."
Yeah, if you can't tell, he's kind of a crazy religious nut. This left me a little conflicted because hopefully you don't sympathize with those sorts of actions, but you're playing as this character. Regardless, someone tells you that gunshots were happening at Billy's old farm. You make your way to the farm and you find Billy's parents dead, murdered, with Billy standing nearby. Well, Billy panics and runs away, leading anyone to think Billy was the one who murdered them. This kicks off a chase sequence where Billy gets away. You make your way back inside of the church, and at this point, Reverend sees himself as the right hand of God and wants to take justice into his own hands. You grab your guns, open the door, and there's a group of people in front of the door. The sheriff is right in front of you, figuring out what's going on, and demands that you put your guns down. There's tension building in the crowd, with all of them wanting a different thing. Eventually, this climaxes with one of them shooting the sheriff, killing him, and everyone dispersing. This starts a gunfight between Reverend and the rest of the town. As you can see, things escalated and escalated until they blew over. And that's how most of this game works. It's a cat and mouse story. You play as Billy getting away until Reverend catches up and then he gets away again. Then you play as Reverend trying to catch up to Billy until you see him, until he eventually gets away, or something else happens. You meet new characters and conflicts and climaxes along the way. It's genuinely a good journey-styled story, where you get to see both sides. And that does make it interesting. As I said, I'm not typically one for story, but this one is actually written particularly well. At least until the last level, where it kind of shits the bed. I'm not going to say anything more about this, but the ending is kind of sudden and feels really rushed. It's a little disappointing, because the game is written particularly well and has some really good voice acting.
William got between me and Thomas and reached into his coat. I thought he was going for a gun, so I shot him. My little brother. And as he fell, I saw what he was reaching for. A Bible.
It's immersive with good pacing. Some of the pacing is a bit slower, but this is not a bad thing. It's relieving to go back and play a game like this, because games nowadays all want to go faster and faster in every way possible. Even games that try to be more immersive in storytelling, like the new Wolfenstein games, still have combat that is balls to the wall. On top of that, a slower paced old western just sort of fits. So the story is genuinely intriguing. You get to see it from both sides, you get characters that you like, and characters that you'll end up disliking. It's only a shame that the ending kind of just sucks and it ends rather abruptly. I won't spoil anything more than that. I do think it's still worth playing for the story, so if you want to know, go check out the game on your own. But how's the gameplay? I mean, that's arguably the most important part of a video game, right? The gameplay is good, but a bit overly ambitious. There's a lot of mechanics that just sort of miss the mark and end up becoming more frustrating than enjoyable. Let's start with the good. Both characters play differently. When you're playing as Billy Candle, you don't really have combat experience, so most of this is focused on stealth. You still can kill enemies, that's not impossible, but you take a lot of damage when you get shot as Billy, so stealthing is the better way to do it. Now, I'm not one for stealth, and I never really have been, so these sections were a little annoying to me, but need to be there for the pacing of the game. And they're not bad, they're just not my thing. The stealth is actually implemented pretty well. If you get seen, it's not game over, you can still kill the enemies, it's just more difficult. But being seen isn't really that much of a problem. Once the enemies see you, you have a few seconds to skitter back into cover, and if you do in time, then they just forget that they saw anything. Yeah, it's one of those stealth games. The enemies are really dumb. I'm not complaining about this. If they instantly saw you, that would be rather frustrating. Giving me a few seconds to get back into cover is totally okay. Though it's always really funny how they just kind of forget that they saw someone walking 10 feet away from them in the middle of broad daylight. But, you know, whatever. The next Billy-specific mechanics you have are platforming mechanics, and oh boy, platforming in first-person games in 2006, these suck. Now you have the basic stuff where Billy can just pull himself onto higher ledges, but this is a little finicky. If the hitbox doesn't have enough space to pull yourself onto a ledge, if your back is touching something, you just won't do it. You start to, and then you just let go. So of course you can get into a section where you're just jumping in front of something, trying to get on top of it. But by far the more frustrating thing is this damn whip. Billy has a whip. You can use this to kill things, but you almost never will. Instead, you'll be using this whip to grab onto branches to swing over to other ledges. Sounds fine, but it just doesn't work like it's supposed to, and you will find yourself falling a lot when you feel like you shouldn't have. The whip is also oddly specific. You can't grab anywhere on that branch, you have to be looking at a specific part of the branch. And the moment you start the whip, you have to stay looking at that branch until the whip connects to it. If you start whipping at it, then look away, you won't grab onto it. Also, pressing the jump button will let go of the whip, so don't do that unless you actually want to let go of the whip. It doesn't make you jump, you just let go. Yeah, the whip sucks, and the Billy parts were not really my favorite from a gameplay perspective, but it was still interesting to be part of the person being chased instead of only being the person doing the chasing. It fit the narrative. You were this weak person that nobody seemed to like, so you ran away and you hid. Reverend is the complete opposite. He has armor, can take a few more hits than Billy. Like, a lot more hits. With Billy it was only 2 or 3 bullets, then you die. With Reverend you can eat a bit more. And if you're confused about the hit indication, the green hit indication around the HUD, those are bullets going near you. It's only red when it hits you. You don't have too many guns at your disposal, but they do play as you would expect them to. You can dual wield pistols or a sawed-off shotgun, which will always take a 3rd slot, meaning that if you have a longer barreled 2-handed shotgun and you picked up a sawed-off, it'll drop that longer barreled shotgun. This is a little disappointing because I'd like to be able to dual wield shotguns and just have it take up a pistol slot instead of the rifle slot, but oh well. Aside from that, you also have a lever action rifle and a scoped variant of that, and that's pretty much it. Pistols, shotguns, lever action rifle, and that's all you got. I would complain about this, but to be honest, I never really noticed the lack of guns when I was playing. The combat feels fine, the gunplay feels fine, and the focus are on the other mechanics, not the guns. For example, if Reverend holsters his pistols, you can activate the sort of bullet time mechanic, and shoot a bunch of enemies nearby before time speeds back up. This is on a very quick recharge of only 20 seconds, so you can really spam this. It's a little awkward to get used to at first, but it's very useful to do. The best thing about the gunplay though, is that this is a mid-2000s game. So instead of getting this smooth choreographed animation when you kill someone, you get crazy ragdolls.
Where art thou? Do a flip! Oh my god!
It's silly, but this is so much better and more fun than those animations. Give me backflips over realism any day. Or at the very least, if you're gonna do realism, just have them ragdoll to the ground. Don't make them do these animations and then fall over all dramatically. Now the guns in this game do have a habit of malfunctioning and breaking in your hands. If you have a rusty gun, it has a higher chance of it breaking. Now don't worry, this is not like Far Cry 2 where the guns rust immediately and then you have to find a new one. Personally in Far Cry 2 this never really bothered me because I always grabbed a new one out of a gun shop, so I like that mechanic. But this one has that toned down way more. In fact, this might have been where Far Cry 2 got its inspiration from. You'll be able to tell whether you have a new or rusty gun. It'll say it literally in the name as you pick it up. It will have rusty in the title. And the guns that are rusty can be used for quite a while. They'll eventually start smoking and that's your warning that durability is kind of shoddy and they're going to break. There's a lot more feedback to the player as to whether your gun is weathered or not in this game compared to Far Cry 2, and there's a lot less RNG. And by less RNG, I mean there's none. It's just durability. The gun just eventually wears out and breaks. So as a whole, the gameplay isn't bad, but man, it tries to be bad. As I mentioned, they were a little overambitious and they have a lot of mechanics that just fucking suck. It's the Old West, so of course they have duels in this game. The way these duels work is that a timer counts down. When it hits 0, you quickly drag the mouse down and then back up to pull your gun up and then shoot, while leaning to avoid his bullets. It's an interesting idea, but the way it's implemented really isn't fun, and is just irritating. Especially since a lot of the time, for some reason, your gun just doesn't get raised out of the holster. You drag your mouse down and up quickly, and nothing happens. I never got stuck on these duels, I would always do it the first or second try, but I can totally understand if you got stuck on these for a long period of time. And then at that point you'd be more frustrated than enjoying yourself. This game just sort of seems to have a heavy case of instant failure syndrome, which is something I'll always complain about in the Far Cry single player campaigns. For example, the Far Cry 3 and 4 missions where you're forced to stealth and if someone sees you it instantly fails you. A lot of stuff like that in this game, although thankfully they never did that specifically. Instead they have things like a timer counting down and if it gets to 0 you fail and have to do that whole section over again. This mechanic has never been fun. Usually the timer is counting down when you're trying to chase after someone, however it can be a little ambiguous on the direction you're supposed to go, and if you don't go the right way you just restart. It's supposed to force some sense of urgency, but I just hated it anytime the numbers started popping up on the top of my screen. On a relevant note, there's a chase sequence that happens about 3/4 of the way through the game. This is timed, but it's pretty hard to mess up the timing. The timer only pops up if you get too far behind, so fair enough. There's also only one path, so it's pretty hard to not know where you're supposed to go. The problem is that this just goes on for so long. I mean, this buggy can haul ass. Look at it go! I didn't know if I was doing something right or wrong. I didn't know if I needed to shoot out the wheels or shoot the people out of the back of the buggy, but no, it just lasts forever. To make matters worse, it gives you no health the entire time. And at the end, there's a shootout. The shootout has a ton of guys, one of which is sitting on a Gatling gun at the top of a hill. How is this fair? Give me health. I saw another review that praised this sequence and I could only think, are you high? What about this was good? Or how about this situation? You're supposed to be protecting someone tied up in this hole. They're throwing dynamite into the hole, so you need to shoot the dynamite out of the air. Alright, sounds fine. Problem is, there is so much bloom and sun that you can't see what you need to shoot. The dynamite won't kill you, it'll kill the person you're supposed to be protecting, which is just irritating. It's one of those things where you can do it perfectly and then you mess up once because you can't see where you're shooting at and now you gotta do it all over again. Which is something I should have mentioned earlier, this game's autosaves are ass. You'll find yourself replaying many sections of the game because you didn't quick save and the checkpoint was in a place that just didn't make any sense. Let's take another situation. Here's a boss battle that is really annoying. Not difficult, just annoying. You cannot get up close to this guy, he will always run away from you. When you finally kill him, which takes some time because again he constantly runs away from him, you get the keys to a door. Well, where you are is sort of a dead end, you were just running in circles trying to shoot this guy, so you go back up the stairs.
I keep forgetting. That's so dumb. A sawed-off shotgun? What? How? What the fuck? How did something fail? It didn't have like a timer counting down or some shit. Like, what failed me? And now I have to fight this guy again? What is this fucking bullshit? And then the game crashed on me. Nice! Fuck this game.
The game just straight up fails you for whatever reason and has you refight the boss again. You could have at least put a checkpoint after you beat the boss. Why is there a checkpoint before, and why did it fail me? Well, as it turns out, the door was just right next to the stairs. Because, silly me, I should have known that. If you're about to tell me the compass in the top right tells you where to go, the compass doesn't tell you where to go vertically. So I thought it was on the floor above me. Nope, the game just failed me, and had me refight a boss that wasn't particularly difficult, but I definitely don't want to fight it again.
Taking the keys to the cell. Let me quick save. Okay, this is where I was supposed to go. If I go that way, it just says mission failed. What bullshit is... Alright, let's test it. Hold on. I quick save. There's nothing I can lose by doing this. Yeah, it's just because you walked the wrong way. The game fucking decides you lose. How stupid is that? Make it so I can't go back. Lock the level off. Do what literally every other game designer does.
Combine lots of these nagging issues with a lot of crashing issues on this final level, and I was getting real sick of this game. And I'm pretty sure that showed through the stream. I wasn't getting angry at anyone, but I was definitely not patient with the game. Another small nagging issue that I haven't brought up till now is that this game freezes for a good 5 seconds whenever it saves. Doesn't matter if it's a checkpoint or if you quick save. The game will freeze, which always scared me because I thought maybe it crashed. This also is a bigger issue than you think. This game likes to randomly kill you as we've discussed, so you'll be quick saving a lot, which means it's going to stop and freeze a lot every time you quick save. It never crashed while I was doing this, but that's not a very quick save. It just makes me stop playing. This game is full of ups and downs. Graphically, it's quite amazing for 2006. The story is presented and written particularly well up until the last level, and the gameplay can be fun but also miserable. I'm understanding why the review scores were pretty in the middle. They were good, not great. They weren't bad, and that's about what this game deserves. All the extra mechanics they added into the game didn't feel like they weren't playtested enough, it just felt like they were a little over-ambitious with their goals. If they dialed it back a little bit, the game could have been a genuinely good, immersive, story-driven old western first-person shooter. Instead, it's just kind of good at best, with moments that'll make you want to pull your hair out. Yeah, I know I'm bald, but whatever, I can pull hair out from elsewhere. Really, that's all I have to say about Call of Juarez. I do plan on playing through the sequels, including the Cartel. I know how bad it is, so be looking forward to that. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Thanks to all of you that followed me over on Twitch and joined me while I was streaming this. If you want to go over there and check that out, you can check out my Twitch at twitch.tv/Jarek4GamingDragon. If you subscribe on Twitch, you will see my videos one day ahead of time. Same thing goes for my patrons over on Patreon. You can click that in the bottom right to check out my Patreon. Patreon members will see my videos one day ahead of time as well. Thank all of you for watching. Click these videos if you want to see some of my other stuff, and I will see you next time.